My name's Catherine Sasanama, and I'd like to ask Shikata-san, I feel we would all feel better if we address the anshin a little bit more. I recognize that we should feel better based on anzen tonight, but we all might be on that chart over there where we have a lot of safety, sort of anshin. Our comfort level, we're out of our comfort level. So I'd like to ask, what is the government's commitment to address that issue, understanding that maybe you're looking at the science, saying we don't need to do as much, but actually we're out of our comfort level. We don't want to drink tea with cesium in them. We don't want to eat beef with cesium in them. It just doesn't taste as good. So can you bring us back? What's your commitment to letting us know, checking food? Is it going to get better? We've read recently in the last 10 days, it's very localized. The communities are very different in how they approach it, and sincerity, it's in their interest to protect the farmers. What are you, the national government, doing to let us know? We want to know what's out there so we can decide ourselves, even though maybe we should feel safe, but we don't. So hotspots, information about what's in the food, what's your commitment to address those issues?
I guess there are very wide-ranging of issues that need to be tackled in order to completely, ensure the sense of assurance among the public. And it may be almost impossible to reach 100% level. But I think one example is Minister Hosono, who is in charge of nuclear power accidents. There have been ongoing dialogue between the government, central government, and Fukushima prefecture in terms of the government's, national government support for decontamination. And there was initial kind of announcement that 5 millisievert is, if it's beyond that level, the government will support, meaning financially, the efforts to be conducted by local municipalities on decontamination work. But I think Minister Hosono is now starting to say, the government will do more. So maybe there could be disagreements, presented, from a scientific point of view, but it is related to the issue of trust, and this is there are measures, that we have to take in order to ensure the sense of security or assurance. And there are, of course, other issues like the beef issues, and the government, this system of identifying individual beef cattle has been introduced because of BSE issues, and now basically all the cattle produced or coming to the market in this country are identified by the number. And when this issue of decontamination of beef cattle became apparent, the Ministry of Health just made those numbers transparent. Of course, again, there's so much more we could do, and we have been trying to step up our efforts of radiation monitoring, and there is still some more to do in terms of airborne radiation monitoring, which our Ministry of Education and Science has been tackling. But these are some of the examples, and I think these are the kind of efforts that would be required for the government for months and possibly years to come.
Hi, my name is David Lieberich. I'm an entrepreneur here. Question more related to peace of mind. Forget the levels of radiation or of cesium in the water. the fact that there is cesium in our diet, is that an issue for small children? Should we be concerned? My wife is very concerned that she's raising our son in an environment where there is cesium in the diet. And just the fact that that's something that he would not have to deal with in another location causes her angst. Also around water. Will reverse osmosis treatment help remove particles, radioactive particles from the water? Or are you stuck buying bottled water forever? What are our alternatives?
I would trust, I would not be, I think I've said before, I would not be worried at the levels of cesium that we're getting. I think there's a very important thing here. We talked to, there's some questions of the science, and there are other questions of trust, and there are other questions of personal choice that families and people should make. And I don't think anybody is saying in any civilized community that people shouldn't make their own decisions about what they choose to eat and drink, and they should have the information to do that. But I don't think, I would argue that regulations shouldn't second guess and try to do the parents' job for them. So I would be happy to drink the water and eat the beef, but I would also respect those who didn't want to. It seems to me that applying the extra caution for children and so on is in large a matter for parents and so on in their responsibility to their children, and perhaps isn't so much of a government issue. But here am I saying things about Japanese society. Perhaps I should hand on for somebody who knows a little more about it.
Just one related issue. Dr. Allison talked about the kind of validity of especially ICRP standards, and on this, I guess this doesn't really reflect, or it's not consistent with our viewpoint. We try to abide, by international standards set, and if there is room, for future revisions, we are most willing to participate in those kind of discussions. But the kind of standards that we have been implementing in this country are pretty much in accordance with ICRP and other international standards. And of course, there are issues like beef contamination, which was apparent violation of the standards that we have set ourselves. And so there was something missing on our side in terms of regulating or implementing the standards set by the government. And after that, from July on, we have been making extra precautionary measures in terms of introducing shipment ban in the prefectures, that we found could be serious in terms of possible contamination of beef. And there is associated question related to rice. And as you recall, in the springtime, at the time of planting rice, there was regulations that was introduced to restrict the planting of rice in the soil where contamination is presumed to be high. And now we are harvesting the rice, and there are two steps that is being introduced. One is preliminary survey, and the second one is actual survey. And the government is implementing, three-staged measures, and this is extremely important in terms of our government policy, especially because the Japanese people depend on eating lots of rice.
Jens-Uwe Schmollack, Radiation Protection Physics, Berlin. Although it is not a scientific conference here, I like to share a small running joke with you, and I hope you will apologize this. That is from the radiation protection community, and regarding the long ongoing historical discussion about dose and proportional effects. That is, never believe a radiation therapist. He will waste the millisieverts as a billionaire wastes the millions. And that gives you some introduction to the understanding to the world between a radiation protection which shares with low doses and a radiation therapist with always working with very high doses. And so it's a completely different world. And I will invite you later on to maybe discuss a bit the lower dose effects. The reason is very simple, and I please comment on this. If you put to 100 person, 100 millisievert, you will get the same amount of cancer in that group as if you would put 1 millisievert to all of these 100 persons. That is simply the proportional risk. And the consequences of that, if you put some amount of contamination to a broader scale of population, the number of cancers will be the same. The individual risk will be lower, but the collective risk, we call it. Maybe you can comment on this scale. And another point of this question is that the high dose effects in therapy has unfortunately as a consequence that you will get another cancer if you survive the therapy. That is very difficult to compare with our situation of very low doses. Yeah? And for that reason, that is an ongoing old discussion here, which we do since 30 years or maybe 40 years, I don't know. And maybe we can do it later and with something to eat. But maybe a short comment on this now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the question on the difference between low dosage and high dosage radiation.
Thank you for your question. I didn't quite sense what your view on this was, but this dialogue, as you say, has been going on about if you give 100 people 1 millisievert, is that the same as giving one person 100 millisieverts? This, in a biological context, is ridiculous. Unfortunately, most of physics, my subject, this kind of linearity argument, as it's called, does work. It's very important in physics and mathematics. In biology, because biological systems have evolved and have feedback systems in them which stabilize and are able to compensate, this linearity argument is... But I do go into this in some detail in my book, but I don't think it's this kind of discussion that we should have here this evening.
I want to thank everyone for your attention. I know it's a difficult subject, it's an emotional subject. I think we've heard a fabulous presentation from the two professors and commentary from the government. Please join me with a round of applause. Thank you. And just before we go and adjourn next door, where you can have some food and drink and talk directly with the panelists, I would like to call up to the podium my co-chair of the task force, Jay Ponaseki.
Just as a member of the audience this evening, listening to the presentations and the Q&A, it's very clear we're living at a time where there's a culture of fear. And we need to understand, as Dr. Allison pointed out, what are the foundations for that, and are the assumptions underlying those fears really appropriate, and should they be reconsidered? And they very clearly said we ourselves have to manage our fears and how we react to information, and we hope that this evening has been helpful. One of the commitments of the task force, the Tohoku Revitalization Task Force, is to share information so that people can make informed decisions. And Dr. Tokuhiro, we thank you for reminding us as we assess our fears the power of our resilience as individuals. Dr. Allison, we thank you for reminding us that sometimes the fear itself is greater than the risk that we fear. And for putting in perspective the amounts of contaminated beef and other food items that we would have to consume during any given period to get closer to the risk. And Shikata-san, we thank you for your candid responses to the questions, and just knowing that the government is aware of the need to rebuild our trust in the communications is critical, and your awareness of the need to partner with science in the development of policy, I think, is in and of itself very reassuring. And I hope going forward that we, as a community of foreign chambers, as members of the international community here, together with science and government officials, can continue to work together to address the problems that need to be addressed for the further rehabilitation and revitalization of the Tohoku region. So thank you.